Yeah, Ramadi was hell. There was different wars, kind of like Fallujah. There was different like battles through Ramadi, but during our deployment, it was just the Wild West. The city was blacklisted after we had a Cobra shot down that killed 2 pilots. Both pilots in a Cobra attack helicopter got shot down in the city. I mean, it was like Black Hawk Down. And then of course here comes all these rifles, and you've got to clean them out. Watching the blood puddle, off these weapons from all these guys that that just died. It was chaos. I mean, it was nonstop of exactly what you would expect war to be.
So I'd like to introduce our guest, Chris Whittemore. He's a United States Marine, medically retired, also the author of Terror to Triumph. And man, you've had an extensive career, not only in the military, but law enforcement. And now you're out helping veterans, man. Chris, without further ado, thank you for coming on the show. I know we've had some times and some tribulations getting our schedule synced up, man, but I really do appreciate you, man. So
yeah, man, thanks.
Yeah, man. So we're just gonna jump right into this, man. Feet first. Dude, how do you start your mornings off, man?
Probably a lot like everyone else, until recently, and my knees are just not allowing it anymore, but used to get up and go for like a 3-mile run, get the day started about, 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Fill the Lifer juice cup up full of coffee, and off we go, and try and get the joints moving and all that, and jump on my the motorcycle about 7 a.m. and ride into work. That way I can kind of just decompress on the way in and on the way back, and then just do it all over again, Monday through Friday. Kind of the banker's hours. Day starts at 7:30, usually home and done and relaxed about 6. So it's just a fun day, and then answer emails and phone calls till about 8 o'clock at night, with the panic.
So, is the ride into work, man? What kind of bike do you have?
I've got a 2014 Street Glide special. It's all like tricked out with the CVO rear fender, extended bags, and
Gotcha.
A bunch of other like custom work that I've done on it.
Nice. Is it the 117 in it?
The 103, but it's got
Three.
A jet kit, and it's kind of bored out. It's got the racing cam on it, so it's kind of slow, but
yeah, kind of slow my butt. No, that's awesome, man. Dude, I love riding. I had a 2011 Street Glide, dude. I love that thing. I can't wait to get another one, man, and get out there in the open air and cruise. Now, Texas don't have helmet laws, right? You can ride without helmet.
Yeah, you can ride without helmets, and sometimes, depending on where I'm going, I'll dish the helmet and all that stuff. But sometimes, it's like, okay, going up to Doubt, 6-7 hour ride, I'm probably gonna put on something to help with the wind, and so you're not getting out there like the whole red face glow because of the wind burn and all that.
Right. Yeah, no, man, I get it, dude. I love riding, man. I miss it. I'll get back to it. Yeah, that sounds like pretty good morning routine, man. It sounds therapeutic, man. Getting up, working out, and hitting that sweet brown nectar that we call coffee.
For sure.
Man, that's awesome, dude. And then, how do you finish that off with a ride and the ride home, man? Yeah. That's definitely a way to decompress.
It's great in the morning, but when it's 110 outside, I'm not going to lie, it's a little punishing. When it's still 98 degrees, at 6 o'clock at night, and you're just like, ugh. and just straight right into the humidity, and it's brutal. But it's I guess the good thing is you can ride yeah, basically all year round. I mean, you're gonna get
Yeah.
some rain days, but
Yeah. That's part of it. That's part of riding, man. That's part of the lifestyle.
taking the punishment every once in a while. But
Yeah, actually, I would like to know what everybody's favorite bike is, man. If they like the street glide or if they like the road glide or if they're a Harley guy or Indian guy, man. I mean, I want to know.
yeah,
Um,
or hopefully it's not a sport bike, but I know some people love the crotch rocket
Hey,
still.
come on, man. Don't knock the sport bike, dude. I love the sport bike too. I had those as well, man. There is a place and a time for all of it, man. I'm in San Diego and I had a R6, Yamaha R6.
Oh, yes.
And I would take that little thing up in the mountains, man, and the twisties and throw that thing around. Now, that's a whole different ride than you trying to throw around a cruiser.
Yeah, big 700-pound monster. You know? Yeah, it's not going to work that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are some guys that can, man. There's some guys that will damn near drag a knee on a freaking cruiser. It's like, you know what? You're a braver man than I, because I'm not doing that.
I mean, I've peg dragged a few times, but it's not a comfortable feeling. I don't like it. It's like,
yeah, exactly, man. That just gets hung up on a pothole and
game over.
Yep. Man, that's awesome, dude. So, where did you grow up at?
I grew up as a military brat, but primarily grew up in a little small town that's only recently, well, not recently, a couple of years ago, hit the news big time. It's a place called Paradise, California. It's up in the foothills, about 2 hours northeast-ish of Sacramento, and it was all over the news as that town that got basically gutted by that wildfire and basically torched the whole town. All the childhood memories went up in smoke. All the places you visited, you know, like the covered bridge, the different little spots, you know, the parks, grew up, family memories, pictures, things like that, completely annihilated. You know, childhood homes, you know, parents and grandparents don't live there anymore, but you know, they burnt to the ground, all that stuff. So it's been, that was really challenging when that first started. You know, lost a few friends in the fires because it happened so quick. The town was gutted in, I think, oh God, like 2 hours and 15 minutes. The whole town was gone. And they've made movies and, you know, movies, books, things like that on Paradise Fire. But it was basically, you know, they never cleaned out the brush through the forest and all that stuff, and lightning strike and electrical whatever, and then whoosh, it was just like just a wildfire, and it just swept right through the town. And people were, you know, described it as like pure hell because they were like parked on one of the main highways out of town, and the fire was engulfing them, so they literally abandoned their vehicles, running down the highway through the fire, just trying to get out. And it's crazy. The movies and stuff like that, you watch it, I'm just like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine.
Wow. We'll have to go check that out, man. And I don't know the story, actually. I never heard of it, but I'm not from California, so that's probably not surprising.
Yeah.
You know, well, how was your childhood, man? Was it, you know, like, was it pretty decent, or like, I mean, how'd you grow up? You know, mom and dad in the house. You said military brat.
Yeah, military brat. Parents separated when, God, I don't even know, probably 9 or 10 years old or something like that. But I also grew up in a whole family full of military. My dad, all my uncles, my grandfather, father, uncles, all grew up in the military. They all were either one uncle was in the Army, everyone else was in the Navy, and I was like, I'm flipping the script and not gonna float on a boat, and I don't want to, you know, be in the Army. So
sure,
I was like, oh, the Marine uniform looks kind of cool. I'm gonna go that way, you know, not really knowing anything about it. But my, you know, my grandfather was actually on Pearl Harbor in 1941 during the bombings, and he was actually a Silver Star recipient. So I've got that somewhere, like, and I think in a safe somewhere, his actual Silver Star from that time. And he was up in the Marine Corps base up on the Northeast when all the bombing started and all that stuff. And so he, of course, never really talked about it. And, you know, and then my uncles.
Yeah. How did that, so when your parents got divorced, man, like 8 or 9 years old or 9 or 10, how did that affect you, man? Like, did you go live with mom or go live with dad, or?
Yeah, when I lived with mom, for a while, and then when I hit about 16, had, you know, the license to be an idiot, kind of went wild a little bit. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I just
What did you do? What'd you do to go wild?
like skipping school, got into the drug alcohol scene, partying all the time, showing up to school like halfway through the day, like you know what, hell with it, I'm here. Not passing any of my classes. I mean, it was horrible. I even told my mom, I was like, you know what, just emancipate me. I don't care. I want out. Like I'm just gonna do my own thing. I'm ready to take on the world at 16, and I'm like,
Sure.
God, looking back, I'm like, I wasn't ready for shit. But about halfway through that stupid phase, I was like, you know what? And my grandparents were actually like, you know what? Come down here and live with us in paradise again. And I was like, okay, cool. So I jumped in the car, went down there, did, I guess the alternative school thing like back then, and then worked at night, went to school in the day, worked at night, started paying rent and, like not room and board, but like, giving some of the check back to the grandparents for like housing and feeding and all that stuff. And then at 18, took the test, passed. The very next day was at the recruiting office, and I was like, let's go. And
so you mean you took the test? You took the ASVAB?
Yeah, took the ASVAB,
yeah.
Passed. I think back then, God, I probably got like a 40. Like I was just didn't care. I was just like, you know what? I want to be infantry. Let's go. Like, where do I sign up? And then September.
So the military was kind of your way out, right? So as you kind of got older and got through these, some of these trials and tribulations, and so you went and lived with your grandparents. Where was your mom and dad at the time?
My mom was living up in Seattle, Washington with my youngest brother and younger sister. Dad was in the Navy still, and he was stationed out in Hawaii with his stationed out in Hawaii. And then I was just running and gunning, and I was like, you know what, September 1995, me and a high school friend jumped, put on the plane, sent down to MCRD San Diego, and it began. It's been just a wild ride ever since.
So you obviously graduated high school, I take it. You buckled down, you went to alternative school, worked, paid rent at your grandparents' house, helped contribute to the household, which that's awesome, man. Not a lot of people do, meanwhile, you have your mom moved to Seattle with your sister
and younger brother,
right?
And then
your younger brother and sister too. Okay. And so they're up there with them. So now you're with grandparents. That's kind of a different realm that most people grow up in. I mean, usually, the siblings all leave at once, right? But why did you exit that? Why were you the one to be like, hey man, I'm going to go live with my grandparents and, leave your mom and your two siblings?
She was kind of had like the new boyfriend guy, all that stuff. And we all got along, but I was wanted to do my way of doing things. I didn't care about the rules. I didn't care about, whatever. It basically came down to, if you're going to live under this roof, you're going to follow my rules. And I'm like, well, guess I'm not living here anymore. And that was it. So that was kind of the how that started. And, it was probably the best choice I could have made, because I think if I would have stuck around up in Washington, I probably would have never joined the military. I mean, I might have, but there would have been a lot of waivers for like criminal record and stuff like that. So it was probably the best and hardest, kind of leaving what you're now in this grandparents' house. They're not like young parents age people. They're not going to tolerate nearly as much stuff, and being retired military and all that. My grandfather, he had a hard line, and that was it. Like, it was just like, here's how it's going to happen, and that's the end of it. Even if I was out late, he'd be like, just nod, and then at 4:30 in the morning, he was waking me up like, let's go, we got work to do outside. And it's like, what? So like there was no get out of jail free, nothing. So it was but it made me grow up a lot too, because I was independent, but yet I was still I didn't have a whole lot of choices
Gotcha.
to go like array, and and then the military really got driven in. So
Yeah. Yeah. He probably drove that home a little bit, be like, hey, you turned 18. What are you going to do with your
yeah,
life? And start instilling that seed.
yep.
And so he did. So 1995, man, you went against the grain and joined the Marines. Your parents kind of hated you a little bit for that, but it's
Oh
okay.
yeah,
They got over, I imagine. Being go blue, go Navy.
yep. No, for sure. They were like, "What are you
um,
doing?"
yeah, so you came in as a door kicker, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
An infantryman.
yep. Joined as an infantry guy,
Okay.
and of course, back in the mid to late '90s, the 3-week war, I guess. Not to downplay it a little bit, but I mean, it was a 3-week war. They pushed through, and that was it. So, going and my first duty station was Hawaii, of all places. So
terrible, terrible duty station.
I was like, okay, this is the worst case scenario. So, out in Hawaii for 4 years, no wars going on. So it was just the unit deployment stuff. You go over to Oki, Korea, Mount Fuji, Japan, did the little 6-month training thing, and
Sure.
and back and forth. So that was, I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And, I'm getting paid to live in Hawaii. But I mean, like, what could be worse than that? So.
Right. Did you develop any good habits like surfing, scuba diving?
I should have, but I was still in that 18, 19 party phase. I got the bought a God, what was it back then? An old Honda crotch rocket way back then in the
oh yeah, the CBR,
probably in '96. Bought the little CBR, racing up and down to Waikiki, Honolulu, like partying up and down the beach. It just living the dream, really. I mean, it was absolutely, it was an amazing experience. I wish I could go back and really, do the scuba diving thing, learn to, surf, do all like that, the beach stuff. But I was just too interested in, partying and going as fast as I can. And hopefully I didn't hit that wall. So.
Sure. Uncle Sam gave you a little money in your pocket, some need for speed and some thrill, man. So I get that, dude. I get it. I've been there. That's why I love crotch rockets. I love motorcycles. I love fast cars.
Mm-hmm.
I still have that itch today, but now it's more reasonable and responsible.
Yeah, things have slowed.
Not the 18-year-old itch.
Yeah, things have slowed down quite a bit.
Sure. So you were in the service. You did no wars going on, and you got out in 1999.
Yeah, got out in '99. Was weirdly, and this is going to date me really bad, but that was right around the time I guess AOL, the dial-up, the internet was out, and the AOL chat rooms and all that stuff. And from Hawaii, I was talking to my now wife of 24 years. We started talking. She lived in Houston. I lived in.
Wait, hold on. Back up. You're hitting up the old dial up there. I'm trying to make it. That was terrible. But what chat room? I mean, this wasn't Match.com. This wasn't Tinder. This wasn't, these dating apps. Like, how did you meet her online and what avenue other than a dial up? Because that's not going to put you to a chat room.
It was the old AOL.com chat rooms that they used to have, the AOL internet. It was like, I think it was, oh God, 20s Love or something like that, chat room. And we just started chatting it up in these chat rooms or whatever. When I was, 3 a.m, I was like, oh, I'm going to just, fuck around on the internet a little bit. Let's see what's going on. And sure enough, I was just like, wow, and we started talking, and in August of '99, ended up moving down to Houston to be with her. And we've been together ever since.
That's awesome, man. My AOL days was very short lived because my dad got a computer. He ended up getting me this game on it, which was, I can't remember the game, but it was like a motorcycle game, and it was kind of cool. And then I looked up porn on my dad's computer,
like Excite Bike.
Yeah, porn. Whatever. I can't remember what it was, but I was just like, oh, boobies. Yeah. Look, oh shit. This is awesome. Like, what? At my fingertips. Yeah. Well, I didn't know anything about history and clearing and cookies. And I'm not a computer person at all, man. So my dad freaking was like, hey, what is this? And I was like, I don't know who did that. Dude, there's two people in the house and a dog. My dog is not looking up porn. Okay. It was me, clearly. So yeah, I got got busted, and that was into my days pretty much on computer. And then so you met her online, you flew to Houston, you met, you got out of the military, right? So you're no longer a devil dog at this point. Then where do you go from there? You meet the love of your life, and that you didn't quite know you're going to be the love of your life,
no
probably.
idea.
Right. So what happened, man? Where do you go from the Marine Corps?
Got out, got down to Houston, and I knew I, was slowly going to miss, a little bit of the military lifestyle. I was still young. I was still into it a lot, so I was like, I need something that's going to be similar, but different. And so, those old, I guess, not TV shows, talk shows like Maury Povich and all those stuff. And then you had like those, like
Jerry Springer.
You had those dudes with the drill instructor hats who'd come on and yell at the kids, and they'd take them to boot camp.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Like, got right into that.
What? You went in, you like scaring kids straight?
Like kids straight. And then I joined the adult boot camp, which is kind of like, what's that movie? First Time Felon, where they go like to that boot camp and they're like basically like recruits again for like 3 months. They've got to pass through 3 different phases. They've got to take like an indoc before they get picked up by a company. It's run just like Marine Corps boot camp. And then I ended up doing that for a long time, from 99 to 2003.
So tell me the coolest story about that, man. Tell me a cool story that you were in there.
Especially the juvenile was something like crazy, because as it turns out, and this is probably the weirdest thing, my wife actually works as a military family substance abuse counselor therapist person. And one of her new clients that just started was, he was looking at the picture she has on the walls, and he's like, who's that guy right there? And she's like, that's my husband. Why? He's like, he was my drill instructor when I was in juvenile boot camp in Houston back in 2002. And I was like, what? And he still remembers me, which is cool, but I'm like, weird, like that I've never in a million years would have thought that was going to be happening. But sure enough, he remembers me, and he remembers when I was there, and he always jokes with my wife, he was the meanest. And I was like, I wasn't the like I wasn't the meanest. You're just a little punk who need to get. You were a little me who I needed to like get back on the right track before you made the same dumb mistakes as I did. But it's pretty cool that he actually remembers me and things like that. So it was that.
Obviously, you had an impact.
And the best moment, I think, with the adult boot camp, because we were literally once a month, we would take the jail van down to the county jail, and we'd go into the intake tanks or whatever, and be like, call out their names, like, hey, you're going to boot camp, get over against this wall. And the reputation was so bad about the boot camp, like, we're going to make them, like, their life is going to be hell for 90 days. But if they complete it, then their sentence is done. They don't have to worry about it. But if they screw up, they get 10 years added on. So it behooves of them to do what they're supposed to do.
Wow, it was that severe? So it's like, hey, listen, pay the piper 90 days or
go to
10
jail
years?
For, the full, pay the freight. So it's kind of like a gridiron gang type thing, but it's actually like Marine Corps boot camp. Everything's painted in like red and yellow. Sure. They have to do drill competitions, and there's an obstacle course that they run, like all kinds of crap that we put them through. And we actually started calling out the names, and this dude was so afraid to go to boot camp. He literally threw himself on the up against the wall and started headbutting the wall to where he busted his head open, so he didn't have to go to boot camp. And we're like, get out of here. And all these people were just like freaking out. But we get them to boot camp. They're just like brand new guys getting off the bus in their particular service branch. They don't know anything. We put them through medical. They get a shaved head, the whole 9 yards. They go to like a receiving barracks, like all kind. It's just like boot camp. And the best experience was probably on a graduation where the parents like come up to you, give you a huge hug. They're crying. They don't even recognize their kid anymore because they're yes or no, all that stuff. It's that change. So I think that was probably the coolest part is the reaction when they first got there, just a huge pile of nothing to graduating, getting their life back on track. Their parents are happy, their families are happy, and the rearrest rate was. The success rate of the program was like 80 or 90%, I think, like that. So it was really high, but it was, but yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing that.
Does that program still exist today?
The county shut it down, and then they turned it over to the like the county sheriffs and all that stuff, and they it just kind of fell to it slowly started like trickling away. Sure. Funding got dropped, all that stuff, but yeah, so
wow, I can't believe that we take a program that has an 80 to 90 success rate and drop it. I mean, that is asinine.
And that was back in 2000.
That should still be existing. Yeah, that should still be existing today. Because if it has that kind of high success rate, imagine maybe our prisons wouldn't be overrun. Maybe we wouldn't have some of the problems we have today. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a program that needed to be piloted and pushed across America.
I think there's only like just a few left standing throughout like the whole United States. Sure. I don't think there's that many programs like that around. But it definitely should have stuck around. I mean, it was a great thing that helped people, but I guess it was funding, because I'm sure it wasn't cheap, but it can't be cheap leaving them in prison either. So it's.
Yeah, what's the difference? In prison, they're getting indoctrinated into a different kind of world versus this. You're trying to give them something and some discipline, some life balance, and projecting them out to the world other than like, oh, hey, we kind of put them through some counseling in prison maybe and some educational like what? Like, you understand when they just got kind of education, they got a real education on how to do criminal shit.
And now they become a better criminal, and it's kind of like, wow, great call there. And
right. Well, so you went from there, man. So you did this program. Where'd you go from there? How'd you get law enforcement?
I was doing that and I was having a great time, but I was kind of like, what, this is awesome, exciting, but it's not the high-speed adrenaline rush that I had, in the Marine Corps. I was still chasing that, like chasing the big wave, like a surfer always wants the next big wave. So I ended up applying to be a Texas State Trooper in like late 2002, and then March 2003, I was in the academy to be a state trooper in Austin, Texas. It was 23 weeks of like boot camp. I mean, you lived there Monday through Friday, had like curfew on Sundays. You had to be back by like noon on Sunday. Like, it was regimented. It just brutal for 23 weeks. But that was, that was awesome. I had a great time. Everyone was military, so they would yell and scream, and we'd all just kind of look at each other like, really, dude? Like, come on. We've all been through this. Like, I think our class was 120 people. 60 of them were like former military, so we're just like, yeah, okay, cool.
But the people who weren't former military probably were like, oh my God.
Like, the first few days, we're just doing paperwork and PT assessments and things like that, and people were dropping. Like, they're like, oh, I don't want to do all this paperwork. I don't want, this is not what I thought. And they want to go back and be jailers or city cops or something like that, and hopefully they were successful. But we graduated 80 maybe. So, but some of that was to 03 when the push back into Iraq started. So a lot of those guys who were in the reserves got yanked back to active duty. So, that was part of it, but a lot of it was they were just dropping. They just couldn't accept it because it was run like a military boot camp. I mean, it was just like it's an academy. It's 23 weeks. You have to live there. You're away from family, and some people just, I can't be away from family for 5 days a week, and I'm like I wish it was that easy. So it was like,
Right.
it was good to see him go, because I'm like, if you can't handle 5 days, like I don't want you coming to help me out. Like it's like,
Nope. If you
yeah,
think
like,
this is pressure,
I've got a whole
yeah.
a whole book full of pressure situations that you're more than welcome to take away from me. That's fine. So, but yeah, so I started doing that, responding to countless high speed chases, arresting people for drugs, DWIs, and this, that, and the other. Fatality wrecks was a big thing for the state troopers. We would get called to every fatality wreck to have to work that, and then you go do the death notifications and things like that. And it's just, that was but the worst. Like that was.
So, were you the state trooper that would give your mother a ticket?
There was a lot of people who I would like, unless I was having to ride with somebody, you had to be like, pretty like deliberate stuff. Like DWIs, I had no tolerance for, because it's just like, there's so many, especially when it's like the EMTs. You pull over the EMTs and paramedics that you see at these wrecks, and they're taking care of all these idiots who like wrecked out and like, killed people or killed their family members. DWI, something like that, and then you see that you're pulling over this EMT for a DWI, and you're like, what the fuck? And we tried to be like, okay, you made it from here to here, but park your car, call somebody, because if they get arrested for a DWI, their paramedic EMT license is gone, it's revoked, just like an 18-wheeler driver. So we would try and work with them the best we could, but at the same time, it was like, you know what, you should know better. Like, what is wrong with you? And sometimes,
yeah, you're held to a set different standard.
I mean, it's like, if you see this every day, how can you knowingly put yourself into this position and have to deal with that? I just, it always like blew my mind. But it was, but some of the, and one of the notifications during that time is actually in the book. Around the Christmas time, and doing all that, knocking on the door at 3 a.m, all that stuff. It sucks. There's not a worse feeling in the world than telling a parent that their kid's not coming home anymore. Here's where their body is. Especially right before the holidays, because then for me it's like, I don't want to celebrate a holiday. I just had to tell a family that their world is now like just been ripped apart. So I don't want to celebrate either. So it was a really power struggle during that time for me.
So you struggled in seeing this death on a continuous basis, and that probably played a tremendous, role on you and kind of your psychology going forward in that job too, right?
Yeah, I was working wrecks around the holidays. How
did you cope with it?
A lot of drinking, and a lot of just kind of isolating away. The typical bad way of doing things. Like the hibernating away in the not wanting to be around anybody. Things like that. Or we just go out and just party as hard as we could and take a cab back home and just rinse and repeat. And then some days got better, but I also started feeling myself becoming, I guess maybe like an ER or a doctor does, or a surgeon. You lose somebody and it sucks, but you desensitize yourself to it. You're just kind of like, so I slowly started feeling myself getting into that mindset, and I'm like, like I don't like this version of myself. So in 2004, so about a year and a half in, I was talking to my wife. I said, you know what? I said, this is great, but I was always a better Marine than a civilian. I was like, so I think, we really need to discuss going back in and, doing that. And she said, she agreed, but she said, you're going to have to promise me though, when you go back in, there's not going to be 4 years out, whatever, like you're going to stay until you retire. This is going to be it. No more job hopping. And I said, you know what? Perfect. Let's go. And she's like, all right, let's go talk to the recruiter tomorrow. And sure enough, June of 2004. Went into the recruiting office, Marine Corps recruiter's office, and said, "Hey, I want back in." And he's like, "Okay," and started. He took me to the computer. He said, "You were a Marine before, so you know how to do paperwork. Fill out all your MEPS physical paperwork, all the re-enlistment paperwork. I had to type it all up myself." And then of course I told them, "I don't care what job you give me. I don't care what duty station. I just want back in right now." And he probably thought he hit jackpot. What recruiter wouldn't? He's like, "Okay, got the perfect place for you. You're going to go back into the infantry, and you're going to go to 29 Palms, California." And I'm like, "Cool, infantry, awesome." I'm like, "Where's 29 Palms?" And he pulled out a map, and he's like, "Right there." And I was like, and my wife and I are looking at the map like, "What the fuck? There's nothing there." He's like, "Exactly." He's like, "You'll know it when you see it." And I was like, "Wow, okay." So
you get what you asked for, man.
Yeah. And a few months later, working out of the recruiting offices like a recruiter's aide, I guess, got the orders to go join 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines in 29 Palms, California. And by the time we got there, it would be a month and a half before the main body came back, because they were still deployed up to Al Assad, Al Qaim, all that stuff up there. Which was good, because that would give us a little bit of time to kind of check out the area, get accustomed to it, which there's not a whole lot to get accustomed to.
What do you mean, check out? What, one liquor store, 3 bars,
well, they had
and a bunch of desert?
They had the Applebee's and the Walmart, 20 minutes away. That was the hot spot. Everyone would go to...
What, Walmart parking lot?
Yeah, the Walmart parking lot, Applebee's. And, or if you got adventurous, you could take the hour-and-a-half long drive down to Palm Springs, or... what was it, 5 or 6 hours to Vegas, or 5 or 6 hours to the ocean. And it was just like, but there's nothing out there whatsoever.
There's still nothing.
No, they actually, the main road that leads through 29 Palms, and you make a left and go toward the base. They've actually put a big ass casino right there. So you don't have to go down the hill anymore to that big casino, which is a great idea. So now you got bars, tattoo shops, barbershops, and a casino for
what could go wrong?
Young Marines to get
a bunch of Marines.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wow, that place has got to be. I can't even imagine what it looks like now.
I would not even. I don't know, man. I've never been to 29 Palms, and I'm trying to make it a life goal to never go to 29 Palms.
I could try and church it up and say, "Oh, it'd be a great experience," but no, that's not true. There's nothing there to I've got to go see that. The only thing that they have that I kind of want to see, but there's just too many memories associated with it. They've got a big memorial wall built up there for all the people from there that died in Iraq, and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think it would be cool to see, but I'm like, you know what? I've got photos, I've got memories. That's all I need. I don't need to worry about that. So
yeah. Well, that wall wasn't there when you were there.
No.
That wasn't constructed while you were stationed there. So we're going to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
Yep. And then we'll get into, I think we're about to go into your special going into the Iraq.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm your host, Dustin Hayes. The show wouldn't be made possible without our sponsor. So, uh, you joined the Marines in 1995, and then you got out and you became a drill instructor for struggling youth and adults in the correctional system. And then that wasn't enough, and you needed something more thrilling. You became a state trooper, and in the time you really saw a lot of death. And one of the ways you coped is with alcohol. And did you actually get any help prior to going back into the Marines to learn more a different coping mechanism, or was alcohol just your coping mechanism and you went into the Marines with that coping mechanism?
Yeah, I basically took that that mindset or lifestyle or as I like to refer to it, the Halloween mask, kind of this is who I am, like, in front of people, and this is who I am behind the scenes kind of thing. And, just, I was just ready to go. And, we jumped in the car off to 29 Palms. We went, and that was going to be a surprise too for me as I'm, checking into the unit, doing all that fun stuff. I guess the rear party or advanced party or whatever was there. And, we're in formation, and this guy keeps staring at me like we were like old friends or something. And I'm like, I don't remember who this is. Like, who the hell is this guy? And I was like, I finally was just like, okay. I was like, do I know you? Like, why do you keep looking at me like that? He said, and he was like home with like his arm in a cast. So he was a Purple Heart recipient from the '04 deployment that they were on. And he was back, and I said, how do I know you? And he was actually one of the guys at the adult boot camp. He had his charges dismissed. It wasn't a felony or anything. He was able to get a waiver, join the Marines, join the infantry battalion, deployed, and now was back with a Purple Heart. But he wanted to, he saw how I was and how the other Marines were that were drill instructors, and that's what he wanted to do. So he ended up joining the Marines, and here he was again in 29 Palms, and I was just like, what the fuck? So,
dude, part of that 80% rate of success.
Yeah, joined the military, and
yep.
Went running and gunning in Iraq, and had a Purple Heart, but he was still, excited to be there, still wanted to do his thing, and as soon as he healed up, he wanted to go back, but that deployment was almost over anyway, so obviously he was just gonna heal up and stay there. But it was I was just kind of shook my head in disbelief. I'm like, of all places, 29 Palms, like, what are the chances? And it was just I mean, it was just one of those things. So
29 Palms, dude, deployment's coming to an end that you just got there, so you're not going on the deployment. When do you go on deployment, man? When is your first real experience?
The first real experience was going to be in September of 2005. So we were only going to be there, June, July, September, like a little over like 14 months, 15 months.
Be where?
In 29 Palms.
Oh, okay.
So the next deployment, I had joined the infantry company. And once they got back, I was with the platoon, and I said, yeah, I did this in 95. I don't want to do this again. And sure enough, as luck would have it, they said, well, we need bodies in the scout sniper platoon. Do you want to do the indoc? I'm like, let's go. Like, I read all the cool books, Carlos Halfcock and the White Feather Sniper, all that crap, and I said, yeah, let's do it. And so they said, okay. So ended up doing that indoc. Oh my God, probably 7 months at this point before the deployment. And they're like, you're in, you're going to be a part of this team, and you're going to, we're going to deploy to Ramadi, Iraq in September of '05. And this is what you're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to be in charge of, going over the wall first into the, the hides where where the snipers will hang out for a couple days at a time. And they're like, you're going to be in charge of setting up the early warning devices, the flashbangs and the tripwire and all that stuff. And that's going to be your role with the sniper team. And then, of course, all that stuff. So we trained like it never stopped. I mean, it was like 5-6 days a week we were doing stuff. There's really not a weekend because we were just kind of on a fast learning curve where we had to all be ready to go because that deployment was coming, fast and furious. And I knew we invaded Iraq, in '03, and I'm like, okay, whatever, 2005, another deployment, whatever, I knew it was a war zone, but I didn't allow myself to think of it as like a war zone. You know what I mean? It was kind of like it was there, but it wasn't there. And that was going to be quite the surprise, in '05. But yeah, so that's kind of how that whole started. And it was off to Iraq.
So you go through yeah, you get to Iraq, man. You go through this training, man, to some intense shit, and you get to Iraq. What do and you're like, nope, it's not a war zone. It's not that bad. And was it immediate change of like, it's that bad?
Within about 48 hours, it was, the reality was there. We, flew into Kuwait, walked off the plane in September. It was nice and, cool. Probably 2 a.m. It was probably, like 70 degrees outside. It's like, oh, we just left California. This place is better than 29 Palms. Like, what is this? Sorry about that. And,
oh shit!
The weather.
That should tell you.
The weather was like, really nice. I mean, it stunk, that Iraqi stink. And I said, okay, well, this isn't too bad, and I was excited to get off the plane. I mean, 18, 19 hours on a freaking plane. I was like, no more. And so we hung out in Kuwait for maybe 10 hours. And then they put us on the girl C-130 from Kuwait up to TQ, which is right outside of one of the biggest air bases in Iraq next to Al-Assad. It was the big giant air base. We landed there. We're going to spend maybe 2 days there. And then we were going to take the 46s from TQ into Camp Ramadi. And, as have all our gear on and we're walking toward the helicopters, it was, I don't know, probably 11 o'clock at night. The 46s are spinning off in the distance. It has that green tip light. So it looks like two like green like chem sticks like flying around. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And I remember, and I put a part of this in the book, but I was sitting there watching the runway disappear underneath me. And I'm like, wow. And you just kind of got that sense, you're like, things are going to be really different. How different, I had no idea, but I just knew things were going to be different. And, we got to Camp Ramadi. We were in Tent City. We had to do the relief in place with the new, the outgoing unit, which the initials RIP, like who came up with that? Like, let's rip with the next unit, like rest in peace. Like, that's a horrible thing to have in a war zone, like rip, like RIP, like that's ridiculous. But we were there for 2-3 days. The first night we were there, we were sitting around playing cards. No one could sleep because we just slept for the last 18 hours on that stupid planes, and all of a sudden the counter battery started going off, and the tent's shaking, just flying everywhere. And all of us who've never been on deployment before, like, what, thinking we're getting bombed, and we're like diving for our flak jackets and thinking like, oh my God, we're getting bombed, like what the hell? And the senior guys are sitting there still playing cards, laughing their asses off like these idiots, and like, relax, it's counter battery. They're shooting out, the patrol is taking fire. They're calling in artillery strikes on people. It's a good thing. Did you hear that? And, got up and was like, ha, okay, that's funny. Like, that's on me. That's ha, ha, ha. But, for the next few days, I would continue, and, you kind of like, get that jumping feeling, but it wasn't, it got better over time. I was like, okay, and then without giving too much of the book away, we were a few days later, walking toward the cafeteria, and, a couple groups stopped at the concrete barriers to smoke before going to the cafeteria or whatever. And the group I was with was like, I was like, stop and smoke or smoke when I get back. I said, I'll smoke when I get back. Screw it. So I ran up and caught up with the group ahead of me. We weren't probably not even 200 yards away from where that concrete barrier where people stopped. And we heard that like a loud explosion, and we're like, all right, counter battery, who gives a shit? So we went in, ate, started walking back, but we decided to go a different way back just to mix things up, break the monotony. And we get back, and the area is just in chaos. And we're like, what? Like, what is going on? Like, what the hell? And they're doing accountability checks, like, hey, go find this person, go find this person. Well, the explosion that we heard was not counter battery. It was actually a rocket from the enemy that came and hit literally right next to the counter battery, killing 4 and wounding like eight others. And we hadn't even been in country like 2 weeks. That was the reality check where it was like, oh, like, right from the jump, it's like, all right, here you're supposed to be away from everything. This is like where all the big wigs hang out, but this place isn't any safer than it's going to be out in the city. So that was the jump start that the next 7 months was going to be hell. That we lost someone that quick. And yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of that deployment.
So you immediately just 2 days into this, starting, receiving losses in the teams, and and now you haven't had a real sense of combat, and you're like, fuck, this is my first interaction, and I haven't even broke the wire yet.
Yeah, like, what is this next 7 months going to be?
Exactly. So what happens, man? You go out after that. Now you obviously you're going to retaliate. Obviously, we're going to plan a mission. We're going to try to find people who are now that close to us to touch us and start killing people on this big base. That's supposed to be secure, especially with higher ups and higher ranking individuals. Usually have a little bit more secure base. Usually, but they don't. And so you start gearing up for the mission, and how do you go out there? What was your first taste in warfare like?
Yeah, we ended up doing the memorial where they do the rifle, the boots, slam it into the box, all that stuff. And then we go out into the city, we take over for the outgoing unit. They're out, we're in. And the first couple times out into the city, there's distinct memories of certain times where, you're leaving out of the wire at 3 a.m. You've got these packs on that, with all your gear, probably adding about 120 plus pounds of crap onto your back. And, we're out in the city. We know we're going to be out there for, 3 to 5 days at a time. And, we were always told, take enough, ammo, grenades, claymores, whatever, because you need to sustain a firefight on your own for like 20 minutes before help could get there. So you were on your own for about 20 minutes in the middle of a city.
And how many people went out in your little, like 2 or 3 or?
There was 6 of us.
6?
6.
So 6 people have to sustain a firefight for at least 20 minutes, which everybody on Call of Duty's probably done that, right? But this isn't Call of Duty.
No,
this is real life. And did you ever get attacked where you had to sustain?
Not for 20 minutes, but there was plenty of close calls, plenty of IEDs that went off, probably 50 feet away, when we're getting like driving in the vehicles, having the IEDs going off, blowing out the Hummer tires, patrolling into a hide. And, we stacked up on this wall, and thankfully over there they had these big like jammers, like it looks like a giant mushroom on a stick on the back of these vehicles. And we stacked up on this wall of an abandoned house, thinking nothing of it, whatever. I jumped over the wall. It's, like Freddy Krueger, like perfect movie plot. This house was like battered and half of the building was gone, but we're going to take over this house. And I jumped over the wall. Everything was clear. We unlocked the gate. The rest of the team came in. And then me and one of the other guys started, walking around, setting up the, flashbangs, tripwires, things like that, for early warning devices in case someone jumped the wall. We could only see so much. And those guys pulled away. And as we're walking back toward the gate, we're probably, 10 feet at most. Also, I just remember seeing this bright flash and feeling like someone just kicked us in the chest. Went flying back. We're like tucked up like this, and gravel and rock and dirt is falling on us. And there was where we had stacked up on the right side of the gate. There was a giant IED buried in the ground right next to that wall. And if those guys wouldn't have been there, like definitely would not have been here. So I think we both must have got knocked out, because I remember, 10, 15 minutes later, I'm like, did you just hear that, that explosion, those people talking? Like, did you hear that? He's like, dude, that was like 10 minutes ago. I was like, no, just right now. I just heard the explosion. So I didn't even have a sense of what was going on. I was rattled. But, we radioed up, and he asked if I was okay. I was like, yeah, I'm fine, dude, like whatever, like let's do what we need to do. Let's get things set up. I had no concept of what just happened. So I knew my head was hurting, but I was like, man, it's 3 a.m. I'm tired. This place sucks. I was rationalizing everything. I knew now, definitely a TBI concussion. I mean, I got knocked out, but I was just like, it'll pass. I'll take some Motrin when I get back, whatever.
Motrin cures everything.
Yeah, 800 milligram Skittles. Let's go.
Yep.
And but then sure, we ended up calling QRF back to pick us up, because obviously if that IED went off, there was someone watching us that a trigger man. So we were compromised. We needed to go back. Well, as we got closer back to the base, I remember feeling like sick at my stomach. I'm like, ugh. But figured, it's 4 a.m. I'm tired. I haven't eaten. It must be that, and told my corpsman, I'm like, hey doc, I need some Motrin. He's like, here's a bag. He's like, don't take more than, 2 or 3 Motrin at a time, that kind of thing. And so I was popping like 1,600 milligrams of Motrin, like every 4 hours, 5 hours. And I tried to eat, but it made me sick. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go to sleep. Stupid decision. I was like, I didn't know any better at the time. So, but there was multiple things like that, where those different experiences happened. And then of course, there's a few more in the book that I wrote, a few of the different like combat stories and combat missions, where we had a lead vehicle hit a IED that flipped it upside down, and the driver was killed instantly. The gunner was pinned underneath the 50 cal machine gun as oil and gas was piling up. He's like, the corpsman like had half his leg severed, but he like crawled over there and put a straw in the gunner's mouth so he could breathe through the oil and gas. And that took 3 of the 5 people in that vehicle, passed away either then or when they got back to the hospital. So it was, right from the get-go. And what is so astonishing to me is, even when I got back to the States and got out and, doing the med board and all that, the VA, asked, well, what deployments were you on? And I would tell, the 05 deployment. She's like, oh, and even the VA people knew about it. I was like, shit, like it must have been worse than I thought.
So you went on that was your first and last deployment?
No, I wish. No,
yeah.
We, I did that deployment from September.
So hold on, go back to the Ramadi deployment in 2005. Mm-hmm. That was probably one of the hardest deployments in probably the Iraq history war, right?
It was, yeah, Ramadi was hell. There was different wars, kind of like Fallujah, there was different like battles through Ramadi, but during our deployment, there had never been an election. The Taliban was running rampant through the city. It was just the Wild West. The city was blacklisted after we had a Cobra shot down that killed 2 pilots. Both pilots in a Cobra attack helicopter got shot down in the city. I mean, it was like Black Hawk Down. I mean, not to that extreme, but it was chaos. I mean, it was nonstop of exactly what you would expect war to be. I mean, it was just the city. We had F-18s flying overhead, dropping bombs. We had, people getting killed by snipers, IEDs. VBIDs going off at different locations. I mean, it was miserable. For 7 months, it was just absolute hell. We ended up losing from the beginning of the deployment to the end of deployment, just our battalion. So just 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, not like the EOD teams. We lost a few EOD guys. We lost some pilots. We lost, but just our battalion was 14, I think, 14 killed and 30 plus injured in that 7-month period. Just in our battalion, just our small battalion. And so they even had a recruiting event where they were trying to recruit, Iraqi police and Iraqi soldiers. And they actually came during the event. There was 70 plus people packed into like a high school basketball gym, if you will. And some guy was able to get in with a suicide vest on full of ball bearings, detonated himself, killing all 70 people in this basketball court. And thankfully I didn't have to, but a lot of my friends went to help sort the chaos, and they were given black trash bags and shovels and said, go try and decipher American versus Iraqi and separate the body parts and put them in these black bags and get them out of there. So it was like putting leaves into a black bag back here in the States. And I was just like, oh. So, I mean, it was that kind of deployment. It didn't stop until we left in March of 06.
Wow. So it sounds like you went through hell in that deployment, man. And that's probably one of the most referred to times in Iraq, right? It's a 2005 Ramadi, invasion there. So you came back. Obviously, you've seen a lot of shit over there. But you still have other trauma that you've dealt with through your life that's gone through your life that you haven't dealt with. So how did this affect you? Did you go back to that same coping mechanism of
oh yeah, drinking? Probably, but to like a whole other level. I mean, it would be nothing to on a weekend get a 30 pack and me and some guys sitting around playing like John Madden, going through a 30 pack, waking my wife up at like 1 a.m. saying, hey, we need more. Next morning waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning, already drinking a beer just to cope, to even sleep. Like there was just I couldn't fall asleep if I wasn't like passing out, essentially. But I figured, I was just, this deployment, this thing it'll pass, over time. And it wasn't passing over time at all, but we were back for, I don't know, 3 months probably. And I was absolutely miserable. I was like this, and of course 29 Palms wasn't helping, but I was absolutely miserable during this deployment, during this time, being in the States, being around my wife and normalcy. Really, I was like, this sucks. I hate this. And we just found out the unit that relieved us was now combat ineffective because they came out of one of the bases and lost like 25 people in a day. And so they needed reinforcements. And I was like, And before I could even like sign up, a few hours later, they came back and like, hey, we got all the people we need. I was like, damn it. I wanted to go back, and as luck would have it, the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines were deploying in January of 07, and they needed some bodies. So I was like, yes. So I battalion hopped so I could deploy 7 months after I got back, 8 months after I got back from the 05 deployment, just because I wanted to be over there. I just wanted to be in Iraq. I didn't want to deal with the normal day-to-day, everyday life stuff. I just didn't want to. So, as luck would have it, joined them January of 07.
How did your wife feel about that?
She wasn't happy, but I think she understood. She just knew that she didn't know what was wrong. And I said, I think I can go over there and seek justice, right the wrong per se, which is never going to happen. But that was my mindset. Like I was like, if I deploy, I can you know, a guy and his gun can go like save the West, and that was my thought process, that I could just go redeploy. I could, right the wrong of all the people who died, things like that. And it was, logically, it was stupid. Like, looking back at it, I'm like, like, what am I thinking, kind of thing.
But at the time, it was rational. You can rationalize it.
Yeah, but like during that time, I could definitely rationalize it. And I was like, yeah, so we deployed to Fallujah, Iraq. I was going to be basically the armory, the custodian guy to help, with the weapons if they got, messed up. It was going to be collateral duty. I would take the, weapons and exchange them for them, if they got messed up. But I was like, the armory guy in the 05 deployment didn't do anything really. So I was like, that's my life. This is going to be great to, go out on missions and, come back and take care of this. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. But, that was another reality that wasn't the case, because, a couple months into the deployment, we, had a vehicle drive over a propane enhanced IED and basically, blew up. It was so hot that it melted the 50 cal receiver into like a blob of metal.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
So we, and then of course here comes all these rifles, and you've got to clean them out and spray them off with the water hose before they would take them to be destroyed, which was always like, why? Like, who gives a crap, But nonetheless, you're sitting there spraying the stuff off, watching the blood puddle, off these weapons from all these guys that that just died, and all that. So we did that deployment, but I quickly realized, halfway through that deployment, we were there January to, was it July, I guess, was going to be when we were coming back. And I was talking to my wife on the phone, and she said, your enlistment's about up. You need to decide if you're going to stay in, because the whole tone of, staying until you retire was starting to kind of shift a little bit, even with her. Just because these two deployments were, the first one, we lost all those people. This one, we probably lost, oh God, I don't know, 10, 15 probably out of our, our area. And I was just like, God, 30 plus people in two deployments, like, it was just tough, and we, what was it? So I decided, do I stay in the infantry, take the reenlistment bonus that they were doing back then, and knew I was going to redeploy, or should I change jobs and I can, now I'm away from the infantry, I can go be a helicopter crew chief and not have to worry about the infantry stuff. I can redefine myself. And so I said, I'm going to reenlist. I'm going to go be a crew chief. I'm tired of walking around, with all this heavy weight on. I'll just walk out to the helicopter and fly. That's going to be awesome. Shoot guns off the helicopter. What could be better? So within a couple months of being back from the 07 deployment, not getting any help, not fixing anything that's wrong with me or anything going on with me or my wife or anything like that, we made the move to Camp Pendleton. So now it's going to be near the ocean. The view was going to be way better than it ever was at 29 Palms. And so,
man, that's like night and day.
Oh God, it was like going from Antarctica to like Hawaii. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so I ended up checking in to the training squadron there, right next to 369, the gunfighters, which is a pretty well-known helicopter squadron. And as it turned out, that helicopter squadron that I now was part of was the helicopter squadron that was flying our close air support in 2005. So it completely here goes another full circle. And I'm like, man, what what is going on? But that, that was great. And of course, being in the new helicopter squadron, learning all the new mechanical aspects, the flying aspects, the shooting, all this other stuff. 2010 was coming. The May 2010, we were going to Helmand Province, Afghanistan. and we would deploy during that time, which that was another that was another weird deployment. That was just, it was night and day. It was 12 hours on, 12 hours off, and that was going to be the thing for the whole 7 months. I mean, there was going to be no rest really for the wicked. It was going to be middle of the summer, so it was going to be 140 degrees outside during the day. And I was trying to sleep from noon to the midnight shift. Sleeping in these little
the hardest part of the day.
The canvas tents with those little stupid wall AC things that always froze up. So you may wake up in a puddle of sweat, and you're like, what? And we ended up flying. Oh my God, what was it? 9,700 flight hours in 7 months or something like that, which at the time I had no idea what that meant. I was like, 9,700 hours, okay, whatever. But within 2 weeks of starting that deployment, my best memory of that was all the crew chiefs and all the pilots stood in a formation in front of the flight surgeon, who basically signed off on everybody and said, do you understand the risks of going beyond what's allowed, what is considered safe to fly as a pilot and a crew chief? There's certain numbers you don't want to exceed, because it just becomes the risk reward becomes really skewed. And we're like, yeah, we're good. And they literally, he signed everyone into a waiver. And we were on a flight waiver from the middle of May to October of 2010. We were about to go home. We were just flying a waiver. Pilots were like falling asleep, sitting there. It was crazy. It was, the pace was asinine. But it was that was a great deployment. It was amazing. So.
Yeah, we might have seen each other over there.
Yeah, maybe we were in Helmand Province, so Marja, the Kajaki Dam, Sangin. We flew up and down the missions. The Brits just turned over Sangin to the Americans not long before that deployment. So, I mean, it was just constant firefights. I mean, we were flying 4 or 5 QRF or convoy escort missions a day during that 12-hour shift. Yeah. I mean, it was just, that one was chaotic. But the hardest thing to swallow during that deployment is all the battalions that I had been with, 3727, were on the ground fighting, and we were close air support for those guys. So full circle again, and a lot of the guys I knew were still part of that squadron. Or I mean, part of those battalions that were fighting underneath me. And I was like, man, so you hear about it, someone's dying or anything like that, you're like, God, I hope it's not. And you wait for the ticker tape to come across. And, there was a few snipers that I knew who were killed over there. I mean, there was just a lot. So, but the primary mission was also to escort Peugeot and Dustoff in to scoop and go, things like that. We did some medevac escort, medevacs ourselves to take the fallen out and take them back to the mortuary affairs. It was chaos for 7 months. But so let's see what after that. Then came back from that deployment, 7, 8, 9, 10. It was about re-enlistment time again, and they said, congratulations. I'm like, congratulations. Got promoted to E6, so I was excited about that. I'm like, but we got better news for you. I'm like, what can be better? Like, am I going to get more qualifications or what? And they're like, recruiting duty. I was like, what? Uh-oh. So deployment to recruiting duty. Recruiting duty sucked. I hated it. 2 years into that, all the past deployments caught up. I was like, I've got to...
Gave you all the time in the world to drink?
Oh, yeah. And my body started shutting down because I was, now behind a desk, so my body could, recoup itself, I guess.
Yeah.
And I finally hit the wall. I was just like, I'm done with all this. I can't do it. So finally help was going to come, and I was sent to the Wounded Warrior Battalion here in San Antonio to start the surgeries, the rehab, the therapy.
So how did you know it was time to get help And how did that help come?
It was the help came by really. I knew it was time when I didn't even recognize myself. I couldn't look myself in the mirror and be like, oh yeah, I was just kind of like this version of myself that I was like, no, I can't be this person. My wife we had just been through a miscarriage. I told my wife, I was like, she was on her own to deal with the miscarriage. I was going to be at the office working until midnight. I was just a horrible version of myself. And the straw that broke the camel's back is I actually asked for help, and the recruiting command was like, oh, you're just stressed. You don't need anything, blah, blah, blah. And so I told the therapist that I was seeing, I said, if I don't get help, this command, I'm going to go down there. I was a scout sniper for a long time. I know how to do this. I was like, I will set up in the parking garage, shoot them in the face, and that's going to be the end of it. And they're like, yeah, you're going to get help. So they put me in an inpatient detox place for 6 weeks, and it was all about that. Where I was just at my wit's end.
So you're getting help not only for PTSD at the time,
Yeah.
or maybe you weren't even there for PTSD. Maybe you were there to get help with your, alcohol problem, right?
Yeah,
was that the main focus? Alcohol problem, or
the PTSD, and then the alcohol was a dual. It was a dual thing. But I mean, 6 weeks like inpatient, like lockdown, that was it. Like that was gonna be my world for the next 6 weeks, and then from there they put me into the Wounded Warrior Battalion, where I was going to go through, multiple surgeries, back surgery, sinus surgery, TBIs testing, cognitive, like all kinds of crap. I was going to become and I joke about it, but I was like a lab monkey, like going from one clinic to another, to ortho, to neurosurgeon, to this person, to that person. I mean, it was just, that was my whole world, was going to medical appointments, and I hated it. But I said, what am I going to do? I need to get fixed up. And I knew my body had taken a beating over the last, from 04 to 15. So the last, 11, 12 years. I said, but damn, I didn't know it was this bad. You finally kind of slow down and take a look and see the totality of everything. And I was like, wow, my body kept the score, like that book says. And it was, it was just starting to look. I was like, oh, I'm going to fix up. I'm going to go back to a squadron, deploy at least 3 more times before I have to retire. But the military was like, we're going to medically retire you. You're done. Thanks for playing. But it's time to go. And in 2015, it was time to go. So.
Wow. So they medically retire you. They said, hey, man, thank you for your service. Here's your check, and thanks for playing the game. Now you're back in this mode of like, well, that's over. Now I have to rebuild. But
yeah,
when you got that help, did you stay in that kind of program, in that mindset, while you were exiting out of the military? Or did you?
Yeah, I stayed.
Okay.
I stayed on kind of on track for a little while. But during that whole time, I wasn't able to drive, wasn't able to do anything for to a degree. I was no longer independent. I was dependent upon so many factors. After my back surgery, I needed help with everything. After different surgeries, I needed help. My knees were mush, so I had a hard time walking. So I was on crutches, going from running and gunning to now I'm crutching around. I'm just miserable. I stayed in counseling, but it was more of okay, yeah, cool. I know the story, therapist person. So I slowly kind of would trickle back into the bad side, but then my wife would pull me out of it. But after a while, all the stress and the beating that I was putting her through, all the deployments, the PTSD hell, the drinking, just everything, she finally reached a breaking point, and she ended up committing suicide. But thankfully it didn't. She woke up from it, and she's doing great things now. But she
wait, hold on. The side effect of what you're going through, and the because that's stressful. That's something that's not talked about.
Yeah.
Is the other side of this.
Mm-hmm.
You went through a hell of a lot. But what people don't understand is you're going through a hell of a lot. So is your wife, because your wife is actually dealing with it just the same as you are.
Yeah.
You know, but on a different scope, because she's trying to be there and that strong backbone for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in turn, she wasn't getting help.
Nope.
She was just having to internally cope with this. And she wasn't using alcohol or drugs or anything like that. So she's just taking all this in.
Yep. And finally she hit that wall, and she took a bunch of pills, and thankfully, the ambulance got there in time. We got her pumped stomach. She went into some treatment as well for herself, and she's doing great things now. She's a military family therapist.
But how was that for you, seeing this?
At first, I was, I was super angry that, how can, the poor me kind of syndrome, which was really messed up. I was like, how can, she be dealing with this? I'm the one who deployed and did it. And I never stopped for a second to think about, what is this? How is this impact over the last 13 years of just nonstop chaos for her? I didn't stop to think like, man, you know what? She's gone through just as much as I have, and all the hell that I put her through. I kind of blamed everything on, her. Oh, it was her, and she should have been stronger. All this other stuff. I was really like the self-pity nonsense until, I really started thinking. I was like, God Almighty! Like, she deployed just as much. She, was waiting by the phone. Every door, knocking on the door could be someone saying that, I was dead. I really had to finally take that step back and really see the bigger picture. And I was just like, oh my God, like, she went through just as much as I did, maybe even worse, because she's has to be strong, has to be this. She wasn't drinking, not taking drugs. She had no recourse, no help. And that was the end result. And after that was really like, okay, we sat down and we really, evaluated everything. And I said, God, not thinking about it, but I had a huge part in this too. She made the decision to do it, but I damn sure didn't help, alleviate the pressure that I was putting her through. And it was, that was really hard. It was just like, but coming out of that, I think has made us so much stronger as well. And, in December of last year, we hit our 23-year anniversary. So we've gone through all of this hell and still going strong. She's now a therapist helping people. I'm helping people. So
she went through this, obviously going through all these traumatic events, and living a different war, the spousal war, from a combat veteran, and almost taking her own life. And then you guys still were able to maintain this relationship, because probably the time frame, from you going back into the Marines to, coming, getting medically retired, there was probably a lot of not real relationship there, right?
No, it was
until you got help.
Yeah.
And then even then you still probably played that role of like, and rightfully so, like, damn, I'm worth nothing. I was a Marine. I was kicking in doors, saving lives.
Yeah. Now what am I going to do?
Crutching around. And, so that's an element of depression that's real,
mm-hmm.
Because you feel helpless, but on the backside of this, you're projecting that onto her.
Yeah.
And there's nothing she can do.
No, nothing. And she had to take it. And, during the all the guys I was serving with knew I was infantry, so they're like, "Oh man, if we get shot down, we hope you're with us because you're gonna know what to do." I'm like, "I'm cool, dude. I don't want to be shot down." Like no. And
yeah,
or every time that the families back home would hear anything, they would all lean on my wife, be like, "Hey," because they knew she had survived 2 infantry deployments, so they would hit her up. So there was just no peace at all.
So she's carrying this burden of the whole squadron too.
She was like the family readiness.
So it wasn't just you; it was a whole squadron.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, man!
And she took just a beating, like a constant beating from both sides. And I was taking the beating from the deployment, not wanting to, be the husband role thing. I didn't want to deal with society. Yeah. I mean, it was just
sure.
It was crazy.
So you both went through this. You got help. You're now clean, sober.
Mm-hmm.
She got help, and now she's doing great things. You had a couple different post-military careers, right?
Yep.
You worked for the DEA.
Yep. Worked for the DEA as a evidence custodian, which was a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of from the federal law enforcement perspective. I wanted to be the door kicker still, even after I retired. I was like, oh, I want to be a special agent. I want to, go arrest John Gotti and all this other crap, And I was, told that due to your TBIs, due to your hearing is completely foobarred, your vision has gotten bad, like all this stuff. They're like the PTSD, the medication. They're like, no, there's no way. You're going to get cleared to be a special agent. So I was really pissed, but I kind of went against everyone saying you can't do things. They're like, oh, you're TBI, you're going to be, you're just going to be a bumbling idiot. Even military doctors were telling me this, like due to your TBIs and your cognitive disorder now, because just the brain is just scrambled because of all the IEDs. They're like, you're not going to be successful in jobs, education, marriage, all that stuff. And I said, we'll see about that. Screw you. And I've always been that way. You can tell me you're not going to be able to do this. Well, watch this, and
hold my coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And I went out and got a bachelor's degree. I got my master's degree in forensic psychology. So I always like to look into what makes people tick, in their mind and stuff like that. So, graduated with almost a 4.0 in my master's program, been married, 22 plus years, and still have a full-time job where I'm helping people as well. So, and all the other little accolades that I've got to do over time, it's just been a great experience, and I've really wanted to use all my, from when I was in the 90s all the way to today. I really wanted to use my experiences to help those who, maybe help families see why is my son, daughter, brother, blah, 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 acting the way he's acting, after these deployments, what's wrong with him? Why is he not talking to me? Well, here's why. Take a look at this, take it from the outside perspective. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Make your own mistakes if you need to, but utilize my missteps to better your life. And I think that's what, a lot of the stuff that I've done since being out, I think has really helped a lot of people. It is probably the greatest thing I could have ever imagined. I could never imagine that my stories would help others, but from what I've been told by others, it's helped a lot of people. So it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, man. It's service after service. It's to serve after you serve. That's a huge thing, man. And definitely, back. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Especially what you've been through, not only on your law enforcement side, but also on your military side and your relationship side. There's a lot of experience that you can relate to a lot of different people and to help them through their trials and tribulations in life.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you do now for fun, man? What's some of the shit you do for fun? I know you ride bikes, motorcycles.
Yeah, do the motorcycle thing. Still work out. I mean, it's still kind of a passion, despite the next day I'm going to be really sore and I'm going to hurt. But I'm actually a high school and college level, the Division 2, Division 3 college. So, the lower level, but still a lot of fun. College football official, where I'm, on the side, like running around watching, guy throwing the flag that everyone boos,
Yeah.
all that stuff. But that really keeps me engaged, keeps me active, keeps me, around, around the game of football. And I love it.
Yeah.
It's so much fun, keeps me in shape. Do a lot of, like, maintenance work on my motorcycle, and for others that bring their bikes over, I'll help them, you know, excuse me, wrench on their bikes, and, help, so they don't have to take it to Harley dealerships and get gouged over the coals.
Right. I mean, that's what happens, oil change, $150. Like what?
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
come on.
And I'll do, get the oil for, like the transmission, primary, all that, and do oil changes in the garage for, they'll buy all the oil for like $60 and bring it over, and, we'll hang out and, drink a beer or whatever, and, send them on their way happy, and, whatever. And, help people put in, take down old doors, put in new doors, just anything I can do to help people out. And now, my current job, is helping with, doing VA claims with people, is another thing that is just absolutely, amazing, to bring in these people that are either Vietnam War era vets that, never have done a claim before, or, they were denied certain conditions because the new law came out, and now the PACT Act and the burn pits and stuff like that, helping them do that, helping families do the death benefit paperwork, it really helping them, and not charging, because there's a lot of places around San Antonio, around the U.S., that people can go to, but they're charging these vets like 30% of their rating that they get, and I'm like, that's asinine.
Like
that's
30% for the life of that. Like every month they're paying 30%, or is it just one lump thing?
Just one lump thing. So
Okay.
let's say, someone gets back paid, 30 grand, they just made 10
Yeah.
off the veteran. And I'm like, and I get it. Everyone has to make a living, but
Yeah.
we're making plenty of money paid by the county, and I'm able to, do this stuff and help people out. And, because a lot of people don't want to deal with the VA. They're like,
Sure.
screw the VA. I don't
Yeah.
want to. But then they come see us, and we do all the paperwork, from the asking for an increase, appeals, all that stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. That's
and
good.
It's just great. Like, I love doing the job. It keeps me, around military veterans. Some I'm like, you don't really need to be here, dude. Like, go somewhere else. But
Yeah.
I try not to judge, but, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
You hear their story and you're like, okay, dude, like,
Yeah. Well, they don't know who they're sitting across.
Yeah. And so it's it's sometimes hard. And then sometimes you start talking to people, and like yourself, you and I maybe were in Afghanistan around the same time, same area. You start meeting people who were in Iraq during the same time you were, and then you can start kind of talking about stuff and talking about past stuff, and it helps. And then, then of course, like you mentioned from the beginning, wrote that book, which I'm still dumbfounded that even took place.
Well, what book you talking about, man?
Oh, yeah. The book that you mentioned, Terror to Triumph. When I was working, right when COVID first started, I was, sitting around, because no one could leave their house. I mean, it just sucked, the new flu, but I mean, it was COVID, whatever.
We all have our opinions about it.
Yeah, like the vaccine that's going to cure the world. It's like, come on, Dustin Hoffman made this stuff. Like, what do we outrage, about the monkey and all this stuff? It's like, come on. This is the new Dustin Hoffman. But no, started sitting around, and I noticed, in talking with my wife, a lot of the stories and the memories of these different deployments were starting to fade due to the TBI. And not that I'm getting any younger, but, things started to fade, and details were, being limited. So she's like, well, you've got time, why don't you just do like like kind of like a diary. She's like, just write it out. And I'm like, all right, whatever. That's a good idea. So I started typing up all these stories, talking to people like, hey, do you remember this? What happened? So I would type about that. And, I've got this 220 pages of just whatever. And I said, okay, well, cool. Now I've got this. And she said, well, why don't you send it in to see if it'll be published? And I'm like, yeah, right. Like, are you kidding me? Like, knuckle dragon infantry guy, door gunner, crew chief, like, who the hell wants to read stories about that? I said, there's a million. You could go to Barnes and Noble right now and pick up 50 books on, the deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, there's 100 of them. And I said, no one wants to read another, American Sniper or, the Lone Survivor, or any of those like Black Hawk Down. No one wants to read those stories again. Like there's movies, there's book. No one wants to do that. And she said, yeah, but your book or your memories are not just deployment. It's talking about, being on the deployment, 5 or 6 missions of hundreds of missions. But I really focused on like coming back home. I wanted to bring the family dynamic into the book to help people understand, it's, and my favorite line is, it's okay to not be okay. I really wanted to drive home that, deployment, coming home, the 22 a day, the drinking all the time, the isolating, why is that happening? What families, friends, loved ones can do to help their person and help themselves to not get into that be a statistic or have a family member commit suicide. And, the cycle that people get in, deploy, home, deploy, home, deploy, home. And I really wanted to utilize that book for that purpose. And it's really unbelievable how many people have picked up the book, have written great reviews about the book, saying, I'm glad it's not just another war story. It's real life, like what happens, during the non-deployment times.
It's when the real war begins.
Yeah, like fighting for yourself. Right in front of the book, it talks about the hardest battle is, with yourself, being back home. It's not even the battle being on deployment, because you get in a routine. There's a chance, yes, but you don't think about it. If
you're in that mindset.
Yeah,
you have this mindset that you're in on deployment that you don't have when you're at home.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You have no control over it. You have no. It's the no controlling chaos is easier than controlling normal day-to-day life that everyone does. Leave, go to home, work, family, kids. It's easier deployed. And so the book really kind of paints that picture from the 90s to now. And it's definitely been a great thing. I've had, past military guys that I've worked with in, 2007 deployment. Guy lives in New York. He called me up and he said, you know what? I was just reading this book and I didn't realize you were the one who wrote it. And I said, yeah, dude. He's like, man, like reading some of those stories, like it really helped. But he said, I wanted to thank you for writing it because everyone told me that like someone needs to write a book about this stuff and like really help people. But no one wanted to write the book. No one wanted to put themselves out there. And I said, I just wrote it down. I didn't think anyone would like it or want to read it or anything like that. But this guy from New York called me. He said, I read the book. I gave it to my kids and my ex-wife, who we've been estranged for, like 10 years, 13, 10 to 13 years or something like that. They have no relationship whatsoever. They were just completely apart because they didn't understand why dad was drinking, isolating, just anger outbursts. Like they read the book, and after, reading the book and family dynamic stuff, they're like re-bridging that gap and they're like back together, and it's actually helped pull a whole family back together. And I'm like, holy, like,
dude, that's amazing, man.
Like mind blown. And
So where do they find the book at?
You can find the book on anywhere that you look for books.
Like Amazon,
Amazon,
Barnes and Noble,
Barnes and Noble, Kindle,
Walmart, Kindle.
Audible, Walmart, Target.com. It's yeah. If you Google, like put in a Google search, "Terror to Triumph," Chris Whittemore, it will pull up literally 8 pages of Google places where you can like click on it and see this book. It's available in Australia, Germany, Japan, like all over. It's my mind's
But
absolutely.
you also have what else that you can get that's about your book and about you? A T-shirt, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. The grunt style thing, and I'm kind of rocking it right now.
That is, man. That's it right there. I
Yep.
recognize it.
Yep. It's the cover of the book is on the back of the shirt. It was a 3-week special through Grunt Style. And we haven't got a chance to talk about this yet, but I just submitted maybe 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I submitted all my paperwork to the state of Texas to create an LLC under the name Terror to Triumph. I'm actually going to make it. It's going to be an LLC, and we're going to start doing, kind of like yourself. And we could probably talk more about this later. But the shirts, mugs, bags, all the LLC type stuff. But our real future goal is we're going to use the Terror to Triumph LLC to start my wife private practice in helping military families as a therapist. She's going to have a company under that title, and we're going to start giving a percentage back to the different like not Wounded Warrior Project per se, but different
different charities
and organizations. And we really just want to give give back and all that stuff. So that's going to be available soon. As soon as we get the green light, I'm going to post that, and we'll talk more about it too, and how maybe we can collaborate and do stuff together. And
we can always come up with a follow-up, do a quick follow-up, when you do that, start forming it.
Yeah.
And put that stuff out there, man.
So that's coming. So more shirts.
More shirts. Is it still available on Grunt Style?
It's not, because it was only a 3-week thing, but hopefully in the next, next month, there'll be the shirts. It's going to be the same kind of design, but the different logo and stuff like that. But we're going to keep, we're going to still keep the front patch thing, but instead of Grunt Style, it's going to be the LLC design. That we did. And
it's going to be your logo.
Yeah. And so we're going to start doing that. And in 95, when I first graduated high school and joined the Marines, if you would have told me by the time I was 40 something years old, I'd have a book, an LLC in the works, hell no.
You say go fly a kite in the thunderstorm, buddy.
Yeah, there was just absolutely no way. And but what throws me off too is these guys who I've never met and I would never have met, are sending me messages. Hey, we picked up your book from, our son was in the Australian military. He was deployed to Iraq. He was, wounded, and we gave this book and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I just can't fathom it. It's just so much that I occasionally need to kind of step back and be like, what is going on? But I don't want to stop the wave, but I don't want to throw myself into a tailspin either. So it's kind of like finding that balance.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Chris, at how we end this show, man, is what makes you a badass. And the reason why you are a badass, my friend, is because you truly went to terror. You went to battle. You became addicted to the battlefield. Your addiction led to trials and triumphs at home. You, my friend, have truly been through terror and came out of triumph. Not only have you sustained a lot of trauma in your military career, your law enforcement career, but it's you who stepped out and said, I needed help. And if you recognize the signs, if you did not get help, you wouldn't be here today.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
dude, you're a badass. You're a badass for helping yourself out. You're a badass for helping your wife out, and for you guys to get healthy and you to continue to serve our veterans after your service, my friend. You are a badass.
Yeah, thank you. And people, please, if you know somebody who's struggling, you're struggling, whatever, like it's I always tell people it's not what you did or what got you to a certain point, it's what you do from this point forward that really is going to define you. You're a much stronger person for asking for help than not. And it's the adage, it's okay to not be okay. If you've gone through certain situations or similar, if you're not kind of effed up, then please go check yourself into the local prison, because you're like the next Ted Bundy. Like take yourself out of the equation. But yeah, pick up the book, leave a review. I appreciate the star reviews, but please just write something, even if it's book sucks. That's fine, but just write something, because that really helps me. And kind of already working on a second book to follow up to that book as well. So yeah,
that's awesome, dude.
So we'll see it.
We'll look forward to the second book. So if you like the second one, you're gonna be back on here.
Yeah. So it's coming.
Awesome, man. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for being on the show, buddy. I really appreciate it. Again, Terror to Triumph, the book. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. Google it. You'll see it. And he's got more great things to come. He's got some swag coming soon, and looking forward to seeing it come out, buddy. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for being on the show, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
If you have a heroic story and you'd like to share it, get in contact with us. Our information's in the bio. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, and share. And then I'll see you on the next episode, badasses.